claim to have did not see a sexual rape. The admissions that one allegedly made did not say he raped anybody or attempted to murder them. We do not want to see racial hysteria used to predetermine the rights of some teenagers. If these young men and others are guilty, they ought to go to jail. But they should not be tried by a media that excused the rapist of Tawana Brawley, that has not complained about the fact that the Wilders at Howard Beach have not spent a day in.
Chief Colangelo, the Chief of Detectives, Darren Rosenthal, who's the Chief of Manhattan Detectives, and Deputy Chief Mike Philbin, who's the Executive Officer of Patrol Borough Manhattan North. Everyone hear me? Anyone who can't hear me? Today we are announcing the arrests of 4 males, all between 14 and 15 years of age, in connection with the April 19th attempted murder, rape, and assault of a female in Central Park. After numerous and lengthy interviews by Manhattan detectives and assistance from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, we have been able to reconstruct the events leading up to the attack as follows. At about 8:30 p.m. Wednesday night, a group of about 17 youths met at 117th Street and Madison Avenue and proceeded to 110th Street and 5th Avenue, where they were joined by 16 other youths. Together, at about 8:50 p.m., they entered the park at 110th Street, and they encountered a male whom they began to harass. One of the youths recognized the male and told the others to leave him alone. They left him and continued to walk south along the Park Drive. At 8:55, they attacked an older male. He is unidentified as yet, who they struck in the head, knocked to the ground, and removed a package containing some food from him. At 9 o'clock, the group observed an approaching police car, and they broke up into smaller groups, ostensibly to be less obvious and to be less likely to draw the attention of the police officers. At 9:05, one group assaulted and attempted to rob a 52-year-old male near 102nd Street. They punched him in the nose, in the face, but they did not get any property from him. At 9:25, on the Reservoir Path, near the West Pump House, they attempted to assault a male jogger who fled this scene without being injured. At 9:30, a group of youths attempted to assault a male and female on a tandem bicycle. It was on the East Drive at 91st Street. They threw rocks at the couple, but fortunately, the couple were able to elude them and escape without injury. At 9:55, a male jogger, approximately 40 years old, was attacked on the West Bridle Path near 96th Street by a group who beat him with a metal pipe. He suffered a serious head injury. He was removed to St. Luke's Hospital. Fortunately, I think he will be able to be released today. At about 10:05, our victim, 28-year-old female, who was jogging on the 102nd Street Cross Drive, was attacked by a group of approximately 12 of these youths. She was dragged about 200 feet into the woods, where they beat her with their fists, we believe a rock and a metal pipe. She was raped by four of these youths. In addition to charges in connection with the rape incident, 5 youths have been charged in connection with the assault.
They got nothing else better to do. They want to get rid of you. They want to get rid of you.
The black youths wanted community control because now I'm trying to give a damn. And you get...
Who takes the Because the black people take that
white
car.
people take it too. White people come into Harlem and get drugs. And if you went to college, you should know 1 and 1 is 2, and 2 and 2 is 4. So you're just responsible for the rape of that woman. If it wasn't a rape, they afforded to you. Talk to me. Who don't get in the job? Who got drugs for no reason? You say that. Wait a minute, let me say something. What?
You're telling me you're not responsible.
You never had psychology? You never had psychology in college? You never had psychology or sociology?
What do you do for a living?
I don't have to tell you what I do for a
Are you
living.
successful in what you do?
No, not in this damn society. That's
Are
right.
you responsible for your successes?
No, if my mind was tied and my hands are tied, no.
You're not responsible for your success. Whatever you've done,
Your psychologist, wait a minute. Your psychologist offends the people. And you don't know, you're stupid. And you're just as ignorant. You're either ignorant or cruel. No, wait a minute. I'm here to argue with you. I know. I'm saying things with the children. No, you do a damn good. You're just ignorant. That's criminal. That's what you say. You're a fool. You're what you are. You don't know anything. Don't you understand? You are brainwashed. You are stupid. You live up now. You don't pay a job. You would have a lot of nerve to say because you should help this damn situation. You have a lot of nerve to say something like that. If you were humane, no, you go right along with the people that kill us. You have no sense of responsibility. Yeah. No, not because you're one. No, that's a cop. That's a cop. I'm not a racist. If I was a racist, I would do something about it. You damn right.
Meanwhile, the victim's condition has not improved much. While she responded somewhat to her mother's presence yesterday, she remains unconscious here at Metropolitan Hospital, still on life support systems.
The 100 or so cases where DNA has proved someone innocent, about 1 in 5 involved a false confession. But how can you get the facts of the crime if you weren't there?
There's only one way. Somebody told you about it.
The police?
That's what typically happens in a false confession case.
Y says that's just what happened to him. The police and prosecutors told him what to say. In fact, after he was arrested, but before he sat down in front of that video camera, he was brought to the scene of the crime. Corey Wise was taken to the crime scene before giving his videotaped confession. Does that concern you at all?
In what way?
That it might color what he says in the statement?
And he's showing us where things happened. Do I see something wrong with that? No.
Actually, Wise says it was more like police showing him.
He said that, hey, look at him. This is where she was dragged and beat at it.
Was there still blood on the ground?
Yeah, in the grass.
You want to know from the confession, was this the culprit? Does he know the scene? If you take him there, if you show him photographs, you've not only compromised, but you've probably destroyed the diagnostic value of that confession.
When I looked at this tape the first time, I say to myself, Elizabeth Leder is just doing a terrific job of getting this kid who is lying to tell the truth.
What you see is Elizabeth Lederer working like mad to try to get these kids to say things that are consistent with the facts as she knows them.
Can you tell us why you decided to get involved in this?
We are very concerned that the allegations that have been made against these young men. Mr. Harold Dix has accumulated a community squad that will start an independent investigation for the United African Movement, which I'm president of, to see what happened here. We do not assume that the young men are guilty just because they have been charged. It is very suspect to us that this city has two ways of dealing with crime victims. One when you're white, one when you're not. There are people that have died from wilding in Howard Beach that have been convicted of that are not in jail without bail. These young boys are being held without bail. People convicted in Howard Beach have not been held without bail. These young boys have been not identified by the victim. Unfortunately, the victim is in comatose. The eyewitness that they claim to have did did not see a sexual rape. The admissions that one allegedly made did not say he raped anybody or attempted to murder them. We do not want to see racial hysteria used to predetermine the rights of some teenagers. If these young men and others are guilty, they ought to go to jail. But they should not be tried by a media that excused the rapist of Tawana Brawley, that has not complained about the fact that the Wilders in Howard Beach have not spent a day in jail. It is unfortunate in this city that you have to be white to get this type of attention when you're a victim of a crime. And that is why we're here today.
Has that changed your habits at all coming into the park?
You know, my habits are always to ride bikes with a partner. So, I mean, it doesn't really affect my habits. But it makes me very uncomfortable. So, I wouldn't change my habits any other way.
Thank you. What is your name?
Peggy.
And your last name, Peggy?
McLean.
Okay, thank you. Like the town in Virginia?
That's where she was found?
Oh, I think it was down there for it. Hi, can I ask you a question?
All right.
I want to ask you if what happened to the woman here in the park the other night has changed your habits at all about coming into the park.
I never come up this far. I mean, my cutoff is down lower, but unfortunately I just was coming up to see the area, but I really know the boundary lines. Living in this area is, it's kind of treacherous when you go beyond the area that they signify here, because you don't know what's going to happen in this park.
Thank you. Okay, what is your name?
Joan.
Same question. Has what happened here changed your habits at all about coming into the park?
Yes.
In what way?
Well, I won't run by myself. I do the 72nd Street Loop. That's it, no further. On the weekends, I'll bike, because there's a lot of people, but that's it. But I would never after dark anyway.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, we're from Channel 7. Can I ask you a question?
No, thank you.
Oh, are you sure?
No,
I just want to ask you if your habits have changed about coming in the park.
Come on.
I just go around the park about 3 times, and this particular instance, I was headed north, right past the 102nd Street transverse, and I saw a group of kids, 2 to 3 dozen, and spread across the roadway, and I tried to swerve around them, and I got as far as I could, and this one kid just reached out and swung with all his might, this missing side of my face. I could hear the whizzing sound go by, and a car was coming behind me, and he swerved into the kids to try to move them out of the way, and a few seconds later he pulled up alongside of me after we passed the gang of youths, and he told me, don't worry, I got him back for you. And which made me feel a bit better, but I still felt pretty much angry.
So you then what? Got away?
Well, I avoided them, and only did I learn on the next lap around that they had hit somebody in the face, because I saw a man in the backseat of a squad car holding his eye with his hand, and the police officer asked if I knew where they went, and I said, well, they were headed towards 102nd Street. I don't know exactly where they went. And on the next lap around, on the west side now, I saw a big ring of fire right 200 feet north of the 102nd Street transverse on the west side, and I assume in the vicinity of where the woman was found who was assaulted.
I saw a big ring of fire right 200 feet north of the 102nd Street transverse on the west side.
Did you do it alone?
Absolutely.
Until Matias Reyes came forward, no one in the district attorney's office gave the defendants and their families' claims of false confessions much credence. But now investigators are looking again.
I know it must have been hard to be in jail all those years. I just hope that the people in the court, the people that got the power to do something, will put the egos aside and say, say the truth.
Antron McCrae's mother, Linda. 13 years I prayed for this day. I'm sorry what happened to this woman. But I'm sorry for my son to have to do 7 years of his life.
I told everybody, one day, something gonna come out and we gonna get the victory. God gave us the victory.
For years, the Central Park jogger case was a crime that defined an era of New York history, a time when fear and racial tension often exploded in the streets of the city. 13 years later, DNA evidence may change everything we know about that night. So what does that mean for the original defendants, the prosecution, and the question, what comes next?
When Matias Reyes confessed to the jogger rape this year, only one of the original defendants was still serving his sentence, Corey Wise. He went into prison as a teenager. He was 30 when he was released last month. These are his first moments of freedom as a grown man.
Corey!
Reunited with his mother after 13 years. He is unsteady on his feet. Of all the defendants, Corey Wise was the only one charged as an adult. As a result, he served by far the longest sentence.
Being deprived of life, it crippled me.
And what of the others? Kevin Richardson and Antron McCrae have jobs. Raymond Santana is in prison on drug charges unrelated to Central Park. Yusuf Salam, now married with 2 babies, has a college degree and is starting a business. And like the others, wants his past cleared so he can move on with his life.
What will be justice now will be for the DA's office to come out and say, we actually did these guys a great injustice.
That will be for a judge to decide. The legal standard? Is it probable this new information would have changed the outcome of the trial? The lead detective on the case says vacating the convictions would simply be wrong.
I think it'll be a sad day for New York, be a sad day for justice.
Investigators emphasize, even if the judge does vacate the convictions of the 5 young men for assault and rape of the jogger, their convictions relating to other brutal attacks in the park that night could still stand. As for Matias Reyes, a convicted rapist and murderer, believe him or not, he wants to apologize.
They never did anything bad in their life to deserve that. It was just, I was off the hook. I was out of control. There was no way that it could have stopped me. And I deserve everything that has happened to me. I deserve the time. And that I'm sorry.
And finally, what about the Central Park jogger herself? She says no one cares more about the truth than she does.
Just this week, investigators told Prime Time that their own probe into what really happened to the Central Park jogger should be complete in about a month. The question is, should the 5 teenagers' convictions be vacated or not?
I admire your strength and resilience and courage in having. I believe what happened to you was a profound injustice and an American tragedy. I wasn't alive when you were arrested, but it's truly painful to see how the system failed you. I admire your strength and resilience and courage in having
forensic evidence and by statements.
New York's mayor at the time, New York City's mayor, called it the crime of the century, the brutal rape and beating of a woman who was jogging in Central Park back in 1989. The victim was a 28-year-old investment banker, and her courageous battle for survival made front-page news around the world. Also making headlines, the suspects in the case, 5 Black and Latino teenagers who were eventually convicted, even though none of them did it. Police got them to confess after turning them against each other during hours of interrogations. The case is recounted in a new documentary by filmmaker Ken Burns called The Central Park 5. Take a look.
Cardigan sat down and he said, look, Ray, I know you didn't do anything wrong, but the other guys right now, they're in other precincts and they're saying that you did it. And they're telling me, well, you're not saying nothing, but these guys put your name in it. And I'm like, I didn't do anything. And he's like, well, this is why I'm here to help you, because I know you didn't do anything. You're a good kid. You know, this isn't you. He pulls out this picture of Kevin Richardson. And he goes,
goes, "You know this kid?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know him." And he goes, "You see the scratch under his eye? That came from the woman. We know he did it. He's going down." At this point, I'm like, I don't know these guys that's there, so I'm just gonna make up something and include these guys' names. Okay, if you're gonna do it to me, then I'm gonna do it to you.
A serial rapist confessed to the crime 13 years after the attack. His DNA matched, and the 5 teens' convictions, they were vacated.
30 years after she questioned and then prosecuted the young men known as the Central Park Five, Elizabeth Lederer is stepping down from a teaching position at Columbia Law School, saying it was best given the nature of the recent publicity generated by the Netflix portrayal of the Central Park case.
They are guilty.
Ava DuVernay's miniseries has drawn critical acclaim, reaching many younger viewers who weren't alive in 1989.
A series like this paints the picture of what it is like to be a person of color in America.
It's the latest example of a dramatic account of real events, prompting a reckoning years later. Another key figure, prosecutor Linda Fairstein, resigned from several boards and was dropped by her book publisher. But Fairstein says the series attempts to portray me as an overzealous prosecutor and a bigot, and the 5 suspects as innocent of all charges against them. None of this is true. In a special last night, Oprah asked DuVernay about Fairstein's response.
It's not about her. Really not all about her. She is a part of a system that's not broken. It was built to be this way. It was built to oppress. It was built to control.
I'm so happy and ecstatic that we can start the conversation now and make sure it will never be another Central Park 5.
An injustice 3 decades old, spurring new calls for change.
You have to be able to say, this happened for a reason.
When I first started researching this story, it was the first thing I had to look at because I needed to understand for myself how it could happen because it's irrational. It doesn't make sense, and it's easy for us to sit back and say, well, I would never admit to something I didn't do. But the dynamics that happen in that interrogation room are so intense, and there's such a huge power differential between the detectives and these terrified young men. And what happens is a little bit what you saw in the clip where they're sort of played against each other, and they're made to believe that they can be witnesses and that they'll be able to go home if they just tell the police what they want to hear. And ultimately, they believed that. They were also naive about the system. I mean, none of them had been arrested before or had any contact with the police, and so they didn't know that they should be invoking their rights, that they should be asking for a lawyer or not agreeing to make these statements.
Sarah, I want to play a clip for our viewers here. You actually captured the man who attacked the jogger who nearly died, confessing on camera. Let's listen in. Let's watch.
I struggled over there with the treatment, and where I dragged the she just kept moaning, stopped me and grabbing my head, that she was in pain and all that, She was bleeding. I can't explain to you what happened after I left Manhattan Park that night, but I can guarantee you that there was no way these kids saw this woman come in or have an idea of where she was coming from. I'm the one that did this.
It's pretty chilling when you listen to that. You had the 5 young men who were wrongly convicted there at the screenings of the film. What was their reaction to hearing this confession?
Well, I think for them, I mean, they first heard that Matias Reyes, the actual perpetrator, had come forward in 2002, and it was on the basis of that confession that the convictions were vacated. The recording that you hear there in the film is one that he gave actually to a private investigator that we were able to dig up. We had hoped to interview Reyes for our film, and he ultimately wouldn't give us that interview. But we felt that it was so important to show him or hear him confessing. We didn't want there to be any question. We didn't set out to make this film a whodunit. It was about how did this happen? And so I think that for the 5 to get a chance to hear him saying that he did it and that he did it alone is vindicating for them.
What was it like to work with them?
Well, it's been an amazing journey. I mean, I've been telling this story for almost a decade. I started by writing my undergraduate thesis about it, and then wrote the book. And over the course of writing the book, I did many, many interviews with them. And so I really got to know them, and I think got them to open up a little bit more as they got more comfortable with telling their stories, which they'd never really been asked to do before. I mean, this, as you said, was a huge story, but people didn't really know them as individuals.
And Sarah, finally, were you able to talk with the victim, the young woman who had been raped so long ago, and how she is coping and how she has survived in her life as well?
We did speak to her early on in the hopes that she would grant us an interview, and we understand why she declined. Her name is Trisha Miley, and she has herself written a book.
A painful chapter in New York City's history. 5 young men wrongfully imprisoned for raping a jogger in Central Park. Retold on Netflix.
I didn't see a lady or hit anyone.
The miniseries triggering new backlash against one of the prosecutors behind the 1989 convictions, Linda Fairstein. Calls for boycotts of her crime novels, a petition getting more than 50,000 signatures. Fairstein's Twitter account deleted as anger boiled over with the trending hashtag, Cancel Linda Fairstein. Lester asked the men known as the Central Park Five specifically about the former sex crimes prosecutor and her team.
Linda Fairstein and others who were involved in the prosecution, they haven't retreated a step.
At all. No apology. All the time we did for something we didn't do, and it hurts.
They still think that we're guilty. So how do we hear when we're constantly in a state of defending ourselves?
When a serial rapist admitted to the crime in 2002 and his DNA was a match, the 5 men had their convictions vacated. They accused detectives of coercing confessions from them. To this day, Fairstein defends the prosecution's conduct and the decision to pursue the case, now calling the Netflix miniseries grossly and maliciously inaccurate, misrepresenting the facts in an inflammatory and inaccurate manner. While one of the men wrongfully convicted had this to say to TMZ.
Even though it's 30 years later, she has to pay for her crime.
They made us lie.
The anger over what they lived through, never far from the surface, now tapped into once again. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
Breaking news in a case that has haunted the city for 25 years. Good evening, I'm Christine Johnson.
And I'm Maurice Dubois. News that a $40 million settlement has reportedly been reached with 5 men wrongly convicted in the Central Park jogger case. CBS 2's Tony Aiello live in our newsroom now with the details. Tony.
Maurice, the 5 men were 14 to 16 years old when they were arrested in the 1989 beating and rape of a female jogger. According to the New York Times, the settlement must still be approved by City Comptroller Scott Stringer and then by a federal judge.
They didn't have the chance to become lawyers, doctors, police officers, firemen.
The 5 sued, but New York wouldn't settle. Then, this year, a new mayor took over and quickly paid up. The 5 will receive a total of $41 million. Today they celebrated and blasted the previous administration.
They did everything in their power to resist this type of resolution.
Y'all don't really understand what we went through. Y'all trying to dehumanize us as human beings. People's call us animals. Well, fact, I have 4 sisters and a mother. I would never do anything to a woman.
As soon as we get in, they separate us, and they start working on us. And I'm hearing Corey being physically beaten in the next room. And I'm immediately beyond afraid.
At the time, my mom, she suffered from a stroke. She had diabetes, and she left. And that was their time to get on me. And what happened? What didn't happen?
We're 14, 15, and 16-year-old kids. Never been in trouble with the law. Never had no police contact. These are seasoned veterans. This fight was fixed.
I just kept telling the truth at first. They asked to speak to my father. My father left the room with them. Came back in the room, he just changed. Cursing, yelling at me. And he said, tell these people what they want to hear so you go home. I was like, Dad, but I ain't do anything. The police yelling at me, father yelling at me. And I just like, all right, I did it. And I looked up to my father. He's my hero. But he gave up on me. He knew I was telling the truth. He just told me to lie.
Did you ever make peace with your father?
No. want to. My life is ruined. Why should I? He's a coward.
Money make it better?
We were able to relocate, put our children in better situations. Besides that, no.
No amount of money could have given us our time back.
Is there a life lesson for what you've been through?
Truth. I preach to my kids, just tell the truth. Be true to who you are. But honestly, the last time I lied got me 7.5 years. There's something I didn't do.
Kevin Richardson, 44 years old.
Corey Wise, Raymond Santana,
Yusuf Salam, 45 years old.
I'm Antron McCray.
5 men connected in a way few of us could ever imagine. Is there a day or a week or a month that goes by when you don't think about the whole episode that brought you together?
It's every day, constantly.
Probably my second or third thought.
Even our conversations is different. It's not normal. Our conversations would be about prison, how we had to survive in prison.
You've just met the Central Park 5, a name they came to share 30 years ago.
You've just met the Central Park 5, a name they came to share 30 years ago.